All right, well, let's move over to Ascenda Raven, and we have one here from Sir Ryan. Always good to hear from Sir Ryan. I can't remember if we read this one or not. I know you and I kind of discussed it off the podcast for sure. This was following one of our Zoom chats, which again for Bannerman are a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun there on the New Year's Eve, fantastic time. But he sent this beforehand, and I really can't remember if we talked about it or not. So if we did, forgive me, I guess. He said, you two keep speculating that GRRM may need to expand the final 2 books into 3 to tie up his loose ends or these loose threads. My question is, what would the 3rd book title be? We know these future 2 have names that tie together. Would he keep the added book title theme similar to Winds, or would he jump to a summer, title? Or could he go into a completely different direction? We have no hints to help us on this should the opportunity arise. So I thought this would be a fun conversation for you two. And it is always fun for me to kind of say, I don't know how we finish this series in 2 books. I have literally no clue. George has said it for several years. It's gotten away from him. That the series has actually taken off and the story has gotten away from him, meaning there are threads that go out. He's actually doing revisions. He's rewriting. I think he's trying to use an economy of words, trying to streamline some stuff. I think he's getting a little too wordy. I think exactly what I thought was going to happen is happening. And I think he has said, I've got to figure out, he's writing it and he's saying, this is turning into 2 books. I think that's what's happening. I think he's sitting there saying,
that's what happened. That's what happened with A Feast for Crows and Dance of Dragons.
Exactly. It's happened before. The whole thing started off as a daggone trilogy. It's supposed to be a trilogy. His original pitch is like a trilogy. And it's evolved and it's changed. If you look at the evolution of the series, it just keeps changing on him. So no wonder he couldn't tell Dan and Dave what the ending's going to be. He doesn't know. He doesn't know.
Right.
Okay? If he knew, he'd write it.
Right, which is fine. I mean, yeah. At the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily matter.
And I say let him write it.
No, you're fine. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I mean, Winds of Winter is next. That's all I know. If he wants to include another book in there and call it something else, and then you still have a Dream for Spring that gets pushed to be the final book, or it is a Dream for Spring, and then he's like, well, maybe I'll finish it with something like this. That's fine too.
What if it's not Winds of Winter? What if he says,
no, Winds of Winter is dead. Yeah.
No, what if though he says, you know what, I had to split this, just like with the original book, Dance of Dragons. What was it supposed to be?
Well, A Feast for Crows was too big and had to get split into A Feast for Crows and A Dance of Dragons.
So you're saying he would keep Winds and then expand, then he'd have an in between book. And what Ryan is pointing out is that those 2. Winter and spring seem to be such a good complement for the ending of your series.
So do you
why would you drop in something in the middle that would say something else? Or do you push the events, what he's written for Winds, and say, a lot of this stuff is more like I was building to Winds, and Winds of Winter is the second half of the book. Do you then make that the second half?
I see what you're saying. Right.
And then the first half.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it because a lot of the places he keeps writing about are like Tyrion and a lot of the stuff that's going on in the south and Essos, and not as much stuff that's going on up in the north.
Yeah, look at all the characters. Look at all the chapters that have been released, and look at those characters. And then also, and again, I don't know if those are in order or what the whole deal is there, but it's at least enough that he felt like he could release it, and it was early enough that it wasn't spoiler. It wasn't late in the book series. So if a lot of the beginning stuff is going to be centered around, all of this stuff happening in the south and moving Dany, you might have to tell a whole other arc with the south, with these southern realms. Even
to get it to end, let's just say, just for sake of argument, that it ends the same way the show does, right? And so you're gonna have to resurrect Jon. Which that could happen in the first 10 chapters. I mean, that's easy. I think resurrecting Jon is 2 chapters. You could even it could be a Davos chapter and then 1 Melisandre chapter, right? I mean, that's boom. You can do that. That's easy. As is like, I don't know. I'm just saying, just for sake.
No. I'm just grinning because it's fun.
Just for sake of argument and to make this as easy as possible. So there's 2 chapters. Arya is actually somebody who's going to take a lot of time to do, I think, because she's blind. You've got to get her to fight the waif, say, I'm leaving, get on a ship, sail back, right? So I think Arya's arc in A Winds of Winter is actually pretty. I think we're gonna get like a lot of her, and then we're not gonna see Arya for a very long time, and it'll be like 10 or 20 chapters before we get another Arya chapter.
Okay.
You know, like
yes, I'm with you, man. You just caused me to think.
I'm just thinking in terms of how you would pace it, because that's like you get that with, like, in this book you get that with Theon, and that it's like, oh, we've only had like 2 Theon chapters, but there's a lot of stuff that's going on, and so I think she is a character where, okay, well, we need at some point she's got to come back. So what are you gonna have, like 4 or 5? You're gonna have 1 chapter where she sails. I mean, I just think I think that's how I would pace her. Is I'd have maybe like 5 chapters in the first, I don't know, half of the book, and then she's gone, and then she shows up at like the very end. I think is how I would probably do Arya's chapter. Now, where you'd have to really the outside characters of the show is where you really have to figure out how do you do that. I mean, I just don't think we're killing young Griff off like early. I think he's around to stay, and we don't know how that's going to figure out. But I mean, just in terms of where we just assuming his arc goes in some sort of a direction to get to the show to the very end, he goes to Storm's End. Seems likely he's going to take it, and then wherever we decide to go from there, whether it's straight to King's Landing or something else, then maybe he and Cersei get married, and then that's maybe Cersei could still blow up the Sept of the Baelor to get rid of the High Faith, and you could do that in the first third of the book, and then you have Aegon come in, young Griff come in, and then his force is too big, and the people are against Cersei, and so there you have the Mummer's Dragon, and I guess it's not necessarily whatever. I mean, I don't know. So maybe that's how you do that. You line up the Mummer's Dragon with Cersei, and it's not Euron that she ends up kind of marrying in the finale, because Euron's his own deal. And then somehow you have to get to the end of then Stannis could be defeated. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot, but I mean, I'm thinking. So I mean, I'm just trying to think of
yeah.
How do you? I think you could fit a lot of that into one book. I think there's going to be a lot of characters you're not going to have POVs for. I think you could do so if like let's say Rickon doesn't die, in like the Battle of the Bastards, then do you have 1 or 2 chapters of Davos going to Skagos? I think that's easy, and then Rickon shows up after Winds of Winter.
Mm-hmm. Are you ready for this? Are you ready for this? So, to our listeners, I would encourage you to, on that podcast player, go back 30 seconds to a minute, listen to everything Sir Matt just said, and think to yourself, does that sound... How many chapters? And then think, does that sound like Winds of Winter? That's why I love this whole thought, because what I'm hearing and what I'm thinking is, when I look at the show and you said, let's say we paralleled the show, everything that happens in season 8 and then even season 7, buddy, that sounds like Winds of Winter. Like, that sounds like there's some stuff happening in the north. The winds of winter are blowing, and man, I mean, stuff is happening right there at the end, which will then be the front end of a Dream of Spring, mm-hmm. which is your final kind of book. There's so much that's going to be going on here that to get us to what sounds like a Winds of Winter, I don't know. I think there's almost enough in what you said, all that stuff that you talked about, Arya, Daenerys, Euron down at Old Town, Sam, King's Landing, and Cersei. Aegon, doing his thing. There's enough going on there and all of that we haven't even we haven't even touched the North. I mean, so
Right.
I don't know. I think that's where I sometimes sit and go, wow, he has got to. And again, not that one title is going to be all this. Everything has to be about like the North. It doesn't. That's not what I'm trying to say.
Right.
But there's just a lot of threads. There's a lot to cover and a lot to put into 2 books. So,
I think it's possible in 2 books, but
it is possible for sure.
It is possible, and the way you do it is you obviously tell a lot of story in one POV, right? I mean, that's ultimately the thing is as we said, there's not a lot of Sansa chapters because Sansa's story is told in Ned chapters and Arya chapters, and then in A Clash of Kings, it's really mostly told in a lot of Tyrion chapters. And so that ends up happening a lot in which you won't have a lot of care. I mean, Robb never has a POV. Robb's story is told to us entirely, for the most part, I'd say about 90%, through Catelyn chapters, right? Except for some of those early Game of Thrones chapters. So there's a lot of that. When there's going to be, if it does go the same as the show. I mean, if it does go the same as the show, look at how much you can tell of Jon's story through Daenerys or Sansa or Davos or even Theon. I mean, there's a lot of Jon's story that can be told through Melisandre. There's a lot that can be told through another character. So a lot of these moments will be in other characters' point of view. And so that is really where you kind of like push this story forward. I
agree with you. It's possible until you start seeing things like new points of views from Ariane Martell, and you're like, wait a second. Now we have a whole new character who is actually taking us. And there are none of our I mean, who are our main cast that we're following through her eyes? I haven't met. I mean, there may be 1 or 2. There's not many. It's you're telling a whole Dorne arc through her. That's a whole new arc.
Do you think he can? Wow. Do you think he can, with all of the extra stuff in the book? Do you think he can finish it in 3 books?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think definitely.
Yeah. I think it's even possible to fit it in 2 books, which is what he's trying to do. I think it's stuff like you're saying you're going to have to. And by the way, to Sir Ryan and everyone, I actually feel like we have had this conversation many times, but the reason we do is because I just think it's fascinating, the process in which you go about this. And when I've been saying it for years, there's so many threads that when I would talk to show watchers only, and I would say, just wait till you get in the books and you're going to see how complex this is. And you're going to see how he's not even close to the end of this story yet. And with 2 major books coming, hasn't been able to finish it. It's not coming to him easily. Because he has, I mean, the web has been building outwardly, and you have to, as you said, tie it up into a nice little neat bow. He's still expanding. You know what I mean? Right. He's still touching places like Dorne and things like that, and he's growing that. So that makes it hard to bring it all back together. That's my whole point. I mean, he's a master writer, but.
Right. And then I mean the biggest thing in terms of finishing it is, just assuming things end up going some sort of direction like they do in the show. It's the outside characters, because you don't just want to kill them. It's not just like, I need to kill this person off so I can finish. It's no, you need to finish their story. And that's what GRRM is doing. Is if it, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, it's one of the things it's my biggest criticism of the final Harry Potter book. I just feel like in the first 10 chapters, it's more like she was like, I have to finish this, and I'm just going to start killing characters off. I mean, like, if spoilers, if you haven't seen the last 2 Harry Potter books or read, I mean, in that first like 10 chapters, right, when Harry is, like escaping, right? I mean, she kills off like 10 characters in a matter of like 3 paragraphs, and it's like, hold on a second, man. And some of their deaths feel so fast, like Hedwig, for example, right? I mean, Hedwig is a very important character to Harry, and during that escape, Hedwig's just killed. Oh, Hedwig died. There you go. And I never ever liked it. And I don't think like that's something GRRM is going to do, because a lot of his deaths have meaning and they're important and like they're very specific. So I think like, you know, like Lady Stoneheart is a character that I don't think's making it to the end, but you can't just kill her off. Like she's important.
Yeah. So the way, just to use your example very quickly of Harry Potter, Hedwig, is there any foreshadowing that owl is going to die, make a sacrifice like that? Not really.
Or Mad Eye or any of these other people
is there any like groundwork done prior to that would say in a reread, wow, look at that. We didn't see that coming in a first initial read.
With the exception,
you know what I mean?
With the exception of the only death I feel like that was really explored in that series was, and I forget which one, is it George that dies? It's one of the twins that dies.
Yeah, I don't know.
I always forget which one it is. But one of the twins dies, right? The Weasley twins dies during that whole deal, and that one is like built up. I mean, like, because I don't know, that one was like the one that hit the hardest, and I feel like it's because they spend time afterwards to be like, oh my god, like this happened. You know what I mean? Like this happened and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. And so all the characters who die in George's series, like he's been, as you said, writing their story, and he laid a bunch of groundwork. Mm-hmm. He kind of told us what's going to, I mean, he's telling us that the saddest sound is the bells. He's telling us about the bells ringing. He's telling us all along that the bells will ring one day and it will be a sad sound and something's going to happen. And we look back in a reread and we go, holy smokes, this guy's been crafting this since the beginning. So, But
actually, I think that he has it's actually kind of, if you look at, say, Harry Potter, it's actually kind of a great kind of parallel, because she started writing the books. I think they were on the 4th book when the first movie came out, and so then she's like, all right, I need to finish this because the movies are coming out, and they're coming out like every other year. So she does finish the book series before the movies, but that's long past for GRRR now. So now he can, and so did the final book suffer a little bit from, I mean, the rest of the book I think is great, of Deathly Hallows. I think it's great. It's like so cool. They explore all this different stuff. But it's really just that first block where I'm like, oh my God, this is happening so fast.
Matt's now trying to save all of our Harry Potter listeners from
No, it's I've criticized it before. But so now GRRR is in the situation where the show's over, so you don't have to race to finish this, other than that you're getting older every day. But you don't have to race to finish it in terms of like, I need to block this to make it finish before the show.
Yeah. No, I'm just teasing you. I mean, like it is interesting because they have that extra element where those individuals, those authors, were involved, to some degree in making, whether it's a TV show or a movie or whatever. And how does that complicate things, and does that affect your writing process? And I think it's interesting. So I don't know. I just, gosh, whether you call it Winds of Winters or Winds of Winter, or you call it something else, I just want another book to come out, and I hope he's this time is, and if he's revising stuff, that means he found something that's better, and he found a way that makes more sense to him as a writer. And you look at that and you go, well, wow, what was the other version that he was working on? The revisions, are they small? Are they minor? Mm-hmm. Is he redrafting? How much is he redrafting?
And keep in mind, okay, so think about this for a second. So A Feast for Crows is 40, or just whatever. It's 46 chapters, I guess, if you count the prologue. A Dance with Dragons is 71 chapters plus an epilogue plus a prologue. So there's 73 chapters. Mm-hmm. Yep. And those were supposed to, like, he was writing that as one thing. Not to mention the chapters that are getting pushed to Winds of Winter that were supposed to be in that book.
That's right.
So 100%. you're talking what, like 120, 150 chapters that he probably had written out for one book that have been spread across 3.
Yeah. So in his mind, one book, and that's what I'm saying, over and over, he's shown that like what he thinks fits into one book, ultimately the editor and everyone else says, look, no way. Robert Jordan ran into the same problem with Wheel of Time. What he thought was going to be one book was 3. His final book ended up being 3 books. And so, that's what happens. I mean, there's just so much more story to tell, and you don't want to rush it. And you're like, well, people have bought in here now. That's why I keep saying, let him write, let him revise, let him finish it, give him whatever he needs, quit distracting him with other projects and things. Let him do his thing. If he doesn't want to finish it, he doesn't finish it. It is what it is. But I would love for him to. It's his book series. It's his life.
And I know we've talked about this. Do you think Winds of Winter ends with the wall coming down, or like or whatever?
No, I mean, because See, the wall came down because an ice dragon,
Right. In the show.
was so, I don't know that it's actually, because you have people who read this series and believe a meteor is going to strike and hit the wall and take it down. You have a large vast majority of the fans.
I think it's the horn because that's what's on the cover.
And there's the horn, so I don't think it's any. I don't even know that I'd have to really pencil out all the different plot lines and go through it, which we've kind of done. We've tried to do a little bit, but I don't know where you end it. It might need to be something epic like that, though. That would be a big. You're thinking of like a big final point to end on, like the Dothraki showing up for Daenerys is a big kind of deal. Lady Stoneheart, Catelyn returning was in the epilogue was a big deal. I mean, at the end of Dance, you have Varys showing his hand and killing Kevin Lannister. So that's a big deal.
See, and the issue is, I think the issue is that if this book is Winds of Winter, so it almost needs to be North heavy. And what's going on there with Stannis and Rand and all those guys, and right now he seems like he's in the beginning of of all the chapters he's talking about that he's like said. I wrote a chapter about this. I did an episode on Patreon where I broke down and said these are all of the chapters that we know about, and it all sounds like it's at the beginning of the book.
Well, I'm telling you right now, I'll make my bold prediction right now. There is so to answer Sir Ryan's question, Winds of Winter will be the second to last book, but there's a book coming first that doesn't have a title. We're going to get it. I don't know what it's going to be called, but there's going to be a title, something brand new. It's bold prediction. Mark it down. What is today? January 10th. As we're recording this, it is, 4:00 in the afternoon. So Sir Ezra, making a